Have you wondered what it'd be like to play the Batman Arkham games, but in a Spider-Man suit? Well, it's kind of here. It's Spider-Man Remastered, and it was on sale recently, and I bought it. I played it, have some thoughts about it. I'm gonna do a quick review, and then I'm gonna talk about three things that really irritated me about this game. In terms of the story, kind of cliches. I'm gonna cover cliches a bit with this. I am Ryan Bosling, the drama king. I have a master's degree in creative writing fiction. I was a quarterfinalist in the Nickel Fellowship, and I taught university classes in intro to literature and composition. And on this channel, I'm reviewing all things narrative from a technical standpoint. So that'll include movies, TV shows, and occasionally games. And today I'm doing a game. Spider Man was originally a PlayStation original game, but then they remastered it and brought it to PC, and I could buy it on Steam and Epic Games. And the concept of the game and the design is pretty simple. Before I go into that, though, I should say that I was never a Spider-Man fan. Like I knew about Spider-Man, of course, growing up, and I read some comics. But I was way more a Batman kid, and I'm not really a Marvel guy in general. I mean, these days I don't like superhero stuff. I don't know why I got the game, to be honest. But I was more of a DC guy, and I probably still am at heart. But that being said, I played this game, and I'm gonna say straight up, I enjoyed it, although I had a lot of problems. But the game's pretty simple. It's an open world game. It takes place in Manhattan. There's a main storyline that you complete, but there's, of course, like you expect in these kind of games, a lot of side missions, a lot of activities you can do. And of course, there's a ton of collectibles that you could earn. And there's like little secrets you could find going around the city, taking pictures and doing little challenges, basically. The story itself is good. It's nothing amazing, but it's really well done. And basically, it serves them as an excuse to get you to go from like this point of the map to this point of the map and fight, investigate, do stuff like that. It's the kind of story that sometimes I would stop and think, like, wait, what in the story made me come to this location to do this? And I wouldn't really know and I wouldn't really care. So I'm not going to criticize like the beats of the story or the actual story. It's just think of it as like a good comic book story or like a superhero movie type thing. I'm going to go now into a little more detail about what I liked about the game and what I didn't like about it in terms of the gameplay. And then I'll go into my critique of the story beats that really, really irritated me. And they're smaller things. Probably the most impressive thing about the game is the city itself. It's big, it feels large, it feels realistic in terms of the scale of the buildings and the city blocks. And when you get up high enough in the sky, in the on top of the skyscrapers, you can see the whole island from one side to the other. So it's really impressive, the draw distance. Even when you're like way up on the Empire State Building and you look down, you can still see like the lights of cars, like cars going up and down the street and stuff. So it's really, really cool. Not only that, they have really granular details so that they have like alleyways with like trash cans and gardens and outdoor lighting, like those little lights that people hang on their patio and clothes hanging and neon signs and stuff like that. And when you get down on the ground, which you don't do that much except to fight, but when you get down there and like just look around and run around, there's almost enough detail for it to be like a shooter, like a normal shooter, like say the Division 2 or something like that. It's almost that good. Not quite, but very, very close. And then they have other details that bring it alive, like planes in the sky way up high. So you can see like their contrails as they're flying over Manhattan. They have helicopters, sirens in the distance. So it has really good atmosphere of a real city. And I've been to New York City several times, many times, I guess. And it kind of has a feel. They did a good job, I think, overall. The second big thing about this game is the swinging and the traversal, which everyone talks about, and rightfully so. It requires some skill, but it's not too hard. And it allows for style. So you can have fun swinging and like get into like difficult places or do like go around tight corners and you feel like, oh yeah, I did that. I'm badass, which is what you want. You want that fantasy. And it really brings to life the feeling of being Spider-Man. They did a good job with that. I mentioned the story earlier being good. It's not great, but it's good. fun. You go along with it. But what I really liked about the story were actually the human moments, like with Miles and Aunt May and Dr. Octavius and Mary Jane. It was really human. You get to know the characters really well, and I really got to like Spider-Man, Peter Parker, even though I never liked him previously, or I guess I didn't give him a chance. I didn't know him well, and it actually made me think that I need to be nicer and more caring in real life. Like there was some parts where I was like, "Wow, Peter Parker's a really cool dude. He's an awesome person. Why can't I be more like that?" You know. So if a game touches you like that, you know the story was working at some level. Another thing I liked about the story is the way they reinvented the mythos of Spider-Man and Peter Parker. It's kind of like how Arkham changed Batman slightly, and you're always looking forward to seeing how the new bad guys look and stuff like that. This game kind of did that, where they made Peter Parker, instead of him being like a pizza delivery boy or a reporter, he's instead a research assistant for Dr. Octavius, who becomes Dr. Octopus. And that's not a spoiler, it's obvious right away what's going to happen. And then Mary Jane, she works for the Bugle. She's the reporter. And Aunt May works for like this shelter, homeless shelter, and Peter helps there a bit. And I think they just did a good job of changing everything a little bit, and kind of making it. For me, it was I prefer this version actually than the standard versions of these characters. That was a little more interesting, and I like the way they mixed the bad guy origin stories into into the lives of the main characters, and Peter Parker especially. One thing was kind of silly though, is that of course Peter Parker is a genius in this version. He's like the world's greatest inventor. And I was just like wondering, why is every superhero a genius? Like they're all geniuses who can make awesome suits and like rocket packs and web slinging things and all this stuff. Like in Marvel, isn't Tony Stark the genius who does suits? So why is Spider-Man now like making stuff at that level? It's just kind of silly. But anyways, I like their reimagining of this. I thought the game also had good side missions. And by side missions, I don't mean like the side activities. I mean the actual side missions, like mini storylines that you could do. They usually required multi parts. So you wouldn't just go there and do something. You'd have to do like a series of things in the neighborhood. And they would require to use a specific aspect of your skill set or sometimes add new ones. And I thought they were creative and fun. So now, the bad. And keep in mind, I like the game. So, I mean, nothing was horrible. I don't feel like I wasted my money. But there were definitely things that I didn't like as much about the game. And that I think I regard this game a little lower than most people from the reviews I've seen. But the most damning thing I could say about this game is about halfway through it, I was kind of tired of the game already. And so the halfway point is like when you beat the first villain. And I'm not going to give spoilers really. But if you played it, you know what I mean. And if you start playing it, you'll know what I mean. But it's like halfway through. I was tired of it because at that point, I felt I had basically seen and done everything. And the reason for that is because all the side content to the game, aside from the main story, really, and the side missions, the side stories, everything else, the filler, the challenges, the what do they call it? The headquarter fights or the base fights, I guess you could call it. Those get old very quickly. So even though the game brags like on its Steam page that there's like a ton of content and all this stuff, not really, unless you're a completionist. If you're a completionist, you'll like it because there is technically a ton to do. But if you're like me and you don't want to like waste time and you don't care about getting Steam badges and stuff like that, it's going to get old. And in fact, I had to force myself to do stuff just to get like certain power ups that I wanted. So I'd be like, oh man, I'm going to have to do a base fight to get base points because each side activity, those filler activities, each type of them give you a different type of resource. So if you do the research activities, which actually weren't that bad, they were the best of the group. But if you do research ones, you get research points. If you clear a base, you get base points. If you do a challenge, which are these challenges from the Taskmaster, who's a bad guy, he gives you across the Manhattan, you get challenge points. And so if you want something, they'll take a certain amount of points, a certain amount of resources, then you have to do a certain amount of activities of that type. So I had to force myself to do them, just like check them off just so I could afford stuff. And that got pretty irritating pretty quick. The second big problem with the game, and probably part of the reason that I got tired of the side activities, is that I wish there had been better and more varied control over Spider-Man. When I first started playing, it felt good, and I thought maybe the combat was better than Arkham, especially the first two Arkham games. Those are the good ones, by the way. But as I played more, and like every fight felt the same, and I kind of found myself getting irritated with how the controls worked, everything felt a bit stiff, and the fighting felt unbalanced. So basically, Spider-Man can't crouch in this game. You can't push a button like control or something and make him crouch for stealth. And this game wants you to do so much stealth, and it's just so clunky. It's really hard to do. There's really only one good move for stealth takedowns, which is like you web yourself and yank yourself towards them and take them down immediately in one hit. And then you do the next guy and the next guy in the same way. But I think you should be able to like creep up via crouching and then do a takedown. Also, let's say you're on a ledge or on a catwalk. You can't easily drop and like hang off the catwalk so they can't see you. And then like move yourself along the ledge and then take them from below, like the Batman games let you do. So there's just not fine control over Spider-Man. It just feels kind of clunky. And I think they should have used the moveset of Batman as the basis and then add more because he's Spider-Man. He's faster and more flexible and stuff. And then put the traversal, the web traversal on top of that. But instead they kind of got rid of the good things of Batman. I mean, I know it's a different company and stuff like that, but when you're copying a franchise, like at least get the good of that franchise and then do your own stuff on top of that. The other thing is I found it kind of tricky sometimes to land exactly where I want, because you'd be swinging and then I want to drop somewhere, but you can't glide. You can't glide Spider-Man exactly onto the spot, like on a dime, like Batman lets you do. So if you like push space, you throw a web out and you yank yourself. So you just like jump like 20 feet in in the direction you're facing. I couldn't go just like 5 feet in front very easily. And it's not a huge deal, but it's a little annoying sometimes. It just makes it a little less fun and the combat a little sloppy. Also, I think Spider-Man needed more parkour moves for moving around smoothly. He doesn't really have that. You could basically like walk, you could run, and you could jump. Those are the only moves on the ground, really. You can technically push control, which is like dodge, and then a direction. He does like a little spin in the direction you're indicating. But it's a clunky moveset. You have to hit control with like your pinky and then move with your fingers. It's just hard to do, and it wasn't really useful on a like second by second basis as you're actually playing the game. The problem with combat is, well, first I'll say I don't think the Batman combat is amazing. It was amazing at the time when it first came out, those first two games. Now it's a little bit tired. And so this game is tired in that way, but even worse. It's worse done than those. And the way I mean that is that so many bad guys in this are impervious to normal attacks or vulnerable only to certain attacks. So when it fights, it always felt like I was doing a puzzle. Like I have to do this to this guy and this to this guy. And it almost becomes like a button mashing / kind of puzzle thing. And it's exhausting. And there's so many punches and bullets and rockets coming at you sometimes simultaneously, which Batman didn't really do. Batman did a better job of like timing the bad guy attacks so you could get a good chain going. You got a rhythm. And this, everyone just like goes at once on you. And you have to constantly dodge by pushing left control. So it felt like 50% of the fights were me just hitting control and hoping I hit it at the right time. Now the combat wasn't really hard, but it's irritating. Always pushing control, and then I'm like, okay, this guy, I gotta electrocute him. This guy, I have to dodge under him and hit from behind. And then, oh no, here comes a rocket, so I gotta grab it in midair, or I have to dodge this punch. And just like annoying, you don't get that chain, you don't get that badass feeling as you're playing, like I used to with Batman. And on that theme, there weren't enough victory poses. Like in Batman, when you finish a fight and like just like crush a guy's head with like your elbow and your knee or whatever, the game would like make a big like a big sound and slow down and zoom in. And you're like, yeah, Batman looks badass doing that. This doesn't do that. It just kind of slows down and Spider-Man just like lands and stands like normal. So you don't get that cool feeling, which I missed. It adds something to it. Regarding the fights, I also thought they should have added more varied elevations of fighting in the city. It's like you're chasing somebody, swinging like from this building to that building or down the alley. I don't know how they would do it because most of the bad guys aren't superheroes; they're just like thugs, so they can't swing. But it almost felt like they didn't link up the traversal of the game of swinging through the city with the fighting. Like you're either swinging to get somewhere, and once you get there, you just fight kind of static. You just fight like on a street corner on the ground. You don't really swing around anymore. And I think they're missing out on an opportunity if you're not matching up those two aspects. Because the coolest thing about the game is the web swinging, but it's not really useful in the fights. So I would have liked somehow, I don't know how, maybe bad guys had rocket packs and like you'd have to chase them, but actually go through the city as you fight in the air and then go down on the ground, fight on the ground, go up, that kind of thing, if that makes sense. One last thing with the combat is I didn't like how they handled Spider-Man's gadgets. And if you haven't played by gadgets, I mean, he has like a grenade that could web people when it explodes. He has like a little flying drone you could throw at it that I think electrocutes people. He has different types of webs. He has the normal web. He has an electrocution web, and he has a web like instantly sticks guys to the wall behind him, like shoots them way back, and they stick. And they might have like one or two other gadgets too. But the problem with the gadgets for me in this game is that to change your gadget, to choose which one you want to use, you have to push the middle mouse button. And then you have like a wheel, right? And so you scroll around the wheel, choose what you want, let go of the mouse button, and now you push E. E is what activates your gadgets. Now, the standard thing that when you usually hit E, if you haven't specifically selected something, you just do your normal webs that like just tie guys up. So then if you want to do something else, you have to activate the wheel. You have to choose, let go, push E, so like you'll shoot a grenade. And then you're probably not going to want to keep it on grenades because they're once the guys are webbed up, the grenades are useless. So you're going to want to switch probably to your regular web or something else. So you have to push the middle mouse button immediately after, switch to a different thing, let go of the E, and choose the regular thing and shoot. So basically, I mean, it sounds worse when I'm describing it because it's awkward to describe. In practice, in the game, shooting, and then choosing another one, your standard thing, and then shooting again and continuing the fight, all of that takes maybe 3 or 4 seconds, let's say. But what I found in playing is that it's so long when you're in the middle of the fight that I never wanted to bother changing gadgets because there was friction. And so I think as a designer or an artist in general, your goal is to reduce friction. You want people to be able to use what you're doing easily in game design. And so this is just enough friction so I wouldn't use it. And so I wasn't playing the game the way it really was designed to its maximum because I probably shot like grenades and the drones and the electrocution web and stuff like that maybe like 100 times for all of them together. Usually I would just fight and use my normal webs. So I think they should have bound it to numbers, the number pad, so you could just like push 4 or 5, 6, whatever, choose real quickly, and then keep the webs as E, so you always have that the normal web shooting. But anyways, it was just a hassle to use, and I feel like I missed out a lot. Earlier, I said I liked the city, the detail of Manhattan and stuff, but it doesn't add up to Arkham. It needs more atmosphere. The problem with this Manhattan, especially in its standard format, like during the day when it's not destroyed, because the city does change a little as you go, depending on what's happening in the story. But overwhelmingly, most of the time, the city feels a bit flat and clean in its standard form, and the textures are kind of plain. It could have used a little more grit or something to bring it alive. Like Arkham, the design of Arkham was just so good, so perfect. It had like the gothic Art Deco, Art Nouveau thing going on.
and it's like always night. I'm not saying it always has to be night here, but it just needs more atmosphere. I don't know how to explain it really, but it just felt a little flat, like just blocks of standard texture buildings. Like it could almost be like Grand Theft Auto 4 buildings or something is how they did it. A little more unique. I wish the NPC crowds reacted a bit more to Spider-Man. They just kind of stood there when you land. Like I want people to run towards you or run away or something. Just a small detail that would have added a lot. And earlier I said I like the story, but I wish they had done more side missions, those side story missions, rather than so much activity filler. Like I wouldn't have minded if they cut the activity filler, like all those challenges and stuff like that. Cut it by like 25%, 30%, and just do more side missions because that was stronger and better and more unique. Because we get so much filler in so many games these days, like the Arkham games, Far Cry games, Assassin's Creed. Like it's all the same. The side missions are unique. I think most players want interactions with characters and like surprises. You don't know what you're going to get when you start a mission, whereas you know exactly what you're going to get when you do the 15th base attack in a row. You know, the headquarters thing. It's just enough of that. And I said I liked the personal stories of the game, like with Mary Jane and Miles and so on. But I'm not sure I like the actual missions with those characters. They're okay, but there's two problems with them. One is that they're not really necessary because the missions that you do as Miles and as MJ, Spider-Man could do them. You playing as Spider-Man could have done those so much more easily because as those characters you can't fight, so you're like always sneaking around. They're stealth missions basically for the most part. But if you're just Spider-Man, you could just done it in like a second, just beat the guys up and do it. And then you're saying, well, the whole point is to be stealth and to mix it up. And I understand that. But then the other problem logically is that these characters, they didn't need to do those missions. They weren't telling Spider-Man what they were doing. They were doing it on the side, and it was forced on you because Mary Jane wanted to go out and do her mission, even though Spider-Man could have done it. So to me, it felt like a forced way to get those side missions in, to do the stealth stuff. And then those missions didn't work with the characters. They didn't take advantage of the characteristics of the characters. So like if you're going to do a mission as Mary Jane, I think it should be heavily puzzle based. Right now they're only lightly puzzle based, but since she's a reporter, just pump up the puzzle aspect of it instead of it being like stealth and using tasers and stuff because like Spider-Man could do that. So do something that Spider-Man can't do, if that makes sense. They weren't horrible though. They weren't. I didn't hate those missions. I just thought they were kind of useless, kind of forced, like a forced way of them changing the tempo of the game. When I kind of would rather just be Spider-Man. Like it didn't add anything. So overall, what do I give the game out of 10? I think I'm going to give it a 7.5. The biggest problem, like I said, is that I got tired of it pretty quick. I would say at about 15 hours into the game. For the first 15 hours, I had a lot of fun with it. And then once it hit that 15-hour mark or maybe 20-hour mark, I was kind of like, I'll finish the game. But I didn't want to play for more than like 20, 30 minutes at a time. Partly because they're overused. Overused to the point where that love affair where you want to compulsively play. I'm going to go through a few examples. It was definitely over. And at 15 hours, that's a little short. Clichés. Clichés are like one of the worst things in terms of writing that you want to deal with. So I bought the game at like for about $20 writer when I was on my MFA program. One of the big things, and I think I always avoid it. Like if you do that, some credits. Really I think about embarrassing and really, really bad. So I got it for 20. I think the game would be better priced at 10 to 15. But still, if you get it at 20, it's still good. I just wish that they had packed the Miles Morales story with this because I heard that it's really short and more like a DLC. So if they added that to this, it would be a really good deal. Right now, it's just fine. Like if you have the money and the time, try it out. You know, if you just the web traversal and the main story is probably worth $20. But I'm giving this a 7.5. Now we come to my critique of the narrative. And I think earlier I said there were 3 things, but I played some more and there's actually 4. But interestingly, they're repeats. So I'm going to handle them as pairs. The first pair deal with something called cliches. And so, what are cliches? Well, if you look it up on the dictionary, it'll say something like an overly used phrase or image or something like that, something that's overused to the point of being tired. And we've all heard and used them all the time. Something like, she's busy as a bee, right? That phrase is a cliche. Or like, he's as strong as an ox or as strong as a bull or whatever. That's another cliche. And there's tons of them. You hear them all the time. But the thing about cliches that they don't really say in dictionaries is that cliches are actually meaningless and they remove the listener from a direct experience of what you're trying to describe. All right. And that sounds vague. So I'm going to go into direct examples and I'm going to show you why cliches are like one of the biggest enemies in art and in particular in writing, because my background is writing. And when I went through my MFA program, I had teachers who would just like scribble out cliches when they were on your manuscript. They're really, really bad. Like if you're going to write and you use cliches, then just don't bother even writing because you're not adding anything new. You're not really saying anything. So now let me go into the examples. So let's take the phrase busy as a bee. If I tell you some dude is as busy as a bee, do you know what he's actually doing? Like, how is he busy? Busy with what? Can you picture it in your head? Does it form an image? Not really. I mean, unless I wanted you to think of an actual dude, like as a bee, has the body of a bee, and his head is like plonked onto that, and he's like flying around, then yeah, sure, I guess it's good. But there's no way that's not what I want, right? So it's not a good image. Now, what if I told you that I was riding in the car with this guy who I described earlier busy as a bee? But I tell you now instead that as we were driving, this guy was giving me instructions because he's like my boss, let's say, and he's giving me a ride. He's giving me instructions what to do that day while he's also on the phone, on his cell phone, on speakerphone, talking to his assistant, telling his assistant, giving him instructions on what to do. And he's also writing emails on his phone as he's driving. And he's so obsessed with getting to work because he just wants to do all kinds of, it's like crush it, that he's driving like 80 miles an hour, swerving around cars, going through red lights in like a 50-mile-per-hour zone. Now there you'd say, okay, this guy's busy, but also maybe crazy and psychotic and dangerous. But now you have a visual, and now you know precisely what he was doing that made me earlier say busy as a bee, because I'm not saying that anymore. But it's way more concrete. And you could imagine it and you could feel it. You could feel the danger, the speed. This guy's talking, he's typing, he's doing all kinds of shit. But then you're saying, well, describing that took longer. So just saying busy as a bee saves time and it's more efficient and it sounds better. But if a phrase doesn't give you any information or imagery, is that really saving time? You're doing nothing by saying that. You could spend a few seconds, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, or maybe like a sentence, sentences, actually saying what you want to say, giving an image, letting the audience feel what you want them to feel or see what you want them to see. And that's far more effective and better because it's particular to that moment and that guy. Whereas busy as a bee, you could say about anybody and it doesn't mean anything. Because if you have, let's say a person's really lazy, they literally just sit in bed all day, watching TV or YouTube, playing video games. If that person says somebody's busy as a bee, what does that mean? That he did like one thing that day? Because to that person who does nothing, doing one thing is a lot. But if like the president of the United States, or maybe that's a bad example with Trump, but if like a CEO of a major company says somebody else is busy as a bee, that means something else. That you'd be like, oh, okay, I guess that is kind of pretty, they must be busy. So it's relative to the person who's saying it. And you don't know where that person's coming from. So let's take another example. Say strong as an ox. What does that mean? Well, if a person, let's say the guy who's saying that, describing the other guy, if the guy saying it is like a weakling, he's a small dude, really, really thin. If he calls somebody else strong as an ox, does that mean that the guy could bench press 200 pounds? because that's not a lot objectively, right? But to that other guy, the weak guy, that's a lot. Or is he saying he could bench press like 800 pounds, which is really fucking impressive? There's completely different. But you keep both of those outcomes, whether it's 200 pounds or 800 pounds, depending on who's saying it, can be described as strong as an ox. Or does it mean the guy is literally so strong as an ox that he like runs and just like breaks through brick walls? Kind of like in Spider-Man with Rhino, by the way. So there's a lot of different ways of interpreting that phrase, and so that's why it's kind of meaningless. Okay, now let's take another example. Tall, dark, and handsome. And that's how women always describe me, by the way. But let's look at each of those three things. What does tall mean? It's a relative term, right? Because if some chick who's like 4'9" calls somebody tall, does that mean the guy's like 5'5"? Because to her, that's tall. Most people wouldn't say that's a tall guy. Are you saying 6 foot? Because to me, I'm taller than that in real life. To me, 6 foot isn't tall. To me, tall would be like 6'5" or 6'3", 6'3", 6'5". That's tall. So it changes on depending on who's saying it. What does dark mean? Right? Tall, dark, handsome. So what's the dark? Is it like an Irish guy with a tan? Or is it like an African American black dude? Or what is it? There are a lot of different ways of interpreting dark. And then handsome. I mean, there's somebody for everybody, right? Anybody could be handsome. Some people like, some women like thin guys or buff dudes, tall guys, short guys, bald guys, guys with long hair. It doesn't mean anything. So now let's do a scenario where instead of saying that, we get something a little bit better. So let's say you have a business conference. There's like 10,000 people inside the conference room or a convention center, let's say, and you're late. And you get there and you were supposed to meet a client, but now they're already inside and you have to find them. And so like you call your assistant up or whatever, and you're like, I'm trying to reach this guy. He's not answering his phone. I got to meet him. Can you describe him to me so I could go in and find this guy? And so if your assistant says, well, he's tall, dark, and handsome, do you think you're going to be able to go into that conference and look around and pinpoint exactly who that guy is just from that phrase, the stupid cliched phrase? And no, of course you're not. Because that can mean that he's a black dude who's 5'5" and what you would consider ugly. That still applies to tall, dark, handsome. Or it could be a white dude who's 6 foot and whatever, like it could be anything. But what if they described him with more precision? That he's about 6 foot and he looks like, I don't know, whatever, Brad Pitt. He looks a lot like Brad Pitt. So much so that people tell him that all the time. Hey, you know who you look like? That kind of thing. So he's really close, but he's buffer than Brad Pitt. And he has a slight tan, like he was just at the beach over the weekend. And he wears like chunky Clark Kent black plastic frames on his glasses. And your assistant think that she likes that. That's her idea of handsome, right? Is that a little bit better? I mean, is it perfect? No, because I'm doing this on spur of the moment here. But it's a lot better than just tall, dark, handsome. Because now the 6 foot thing, that probably gets rid of like 80% of the guys in the building, right? So you're narrowing it down. It's more particular. The Clark Kent glasses narrows it way down even more. So now instead of just having 20% of the guys left, you probably have like 5% or 3%. And so on. So it's a lot more particular. And that's what you want. You want particularity in your writing and in your descriptions. Because if you're not being particular, it's worthless. And so now I'm going to get to my last example here. And it's one that really irritates me because I hear it all the time, and I'm sure you have too. And actually, I think I just heard it like yesterday or the day before, but it's always at the end of like a sports match, like basketball, football, whatever. And the ESPN reporter will go up to the player, the best player on the team, the guy who won the game or whatever. And they'll be like, how did you do it? What's your secret? And the player's always like, I gave it 110%. 110, right? You got to give it 110. What does that mean? What's the difference between 110 and 111 or 120? Or why not 2,553%? Because let's look at it in several different ways. If you look at it literally, if a person gave it 110%, because remember mathematically, 100% is the max. You can't go above that. So if you're going 110, that probably means you so exhausted yourself that your body's drained of electrolytes. You're like stripped of all the fats in your body, right? You're probably dehydrated and you're probably going to die. Like your body's going to go into shock and die because you overexerted. So obviously that's not what they meant. You can't go 110% and then live to do an interview about it and say, I give it 110%. So should you say 90%? Well, even then, why 90? Why not 91? Why not 80, 85, 87, and so on? And you might think, well, it's stupid. I'm playing games with words and with numbers. But I'm not. I want precision and I want real meaning. Because what does he mean by he gave it 110%? Did he switch diets? Did he do a paleo diet? And for him, that was difficult. And so that's what he means that he did something extra. He did more than usual. Or does he mean that he went vegetarian? Or does he mean that he switched from weightlifting to just doing cardio? Or is he just doing pure weightlifting? Or is he doing aerobics? Did he pick up skating, inline skating? Or did he get a new old school coach who made him stop masturbating for the week up to the game? Or did he have sex? Was he masturbating all the time? That was the secret. He's just like constantly whacking off because he's so excited for the game and just gets him excited and he's got to do it. And so on. There's a million ways that a guy could do something more than usual that's different to prepare for a game or a match or whatever. So that phrase, gave it 110%, gives you nothing. It doesn't tell you anything. Instead, just say what you want to say. Say what you did. What did you do? Did you train extra? Did you stay after the group training and like put weights on your legs and on your wrists so you could build up that strength? And you stayed an extra 2 hours every day. Is that what it is? Or did you give up video games and you slept better? The funny thing is that phrase 110 is so meaningless that after the athlete says that, the coach or manager could come up to him in the locker room and could say, you son of a bitch, why did you give it 110? I expect 120. You're on the bench. You know, he could get angry. That's how meaningless the phrase is. It could actually be a bad thing, right? So the whole point here is that cliches are to be avoided at all costs. They're absolutely horrible. Because the whole point of language and of art is to convince somebody who's completely unlike you, who has a completely different upbringing, who maybe has never been to the places you have been to and known the types of people you've known. They have almost nothing to do with you except that they're human, as far as you know. And yet you want them to see what you want them to see, and you want them to feel what you felt or what you want them to feel, right? You're like slipping via their eyes and their ears into their brain and like pouring your own experiences in there. It's like you're pouring honey into a jar and filling them up with your experience and your understanding of the world and your feelings. And to do that, you can't use ready-made language that everybody else uses all the time, because that's not going to be particular to you. You have to use your own language, your own descriptions. It has to be your own thing in art and in language. And so how does this connect to Spider-Man? Well, obviously Spider-Man's a game, and the cliches I'm talking about here that I'm going to describe are visual, and they irritated the hell out of me because I see them all the time. And actually, it was only when I saw these two cliches that I actually thought that, wait, was this game written by comic book writers? I hadn't even thought that before. But the reason I thought it is because it's so cheesy and so bad. I was like, this has to be comic book writers because it's not very good. I mean, no disrespect, but comic book writers aren't Tolstoy or whatever, you know? And I actually looked it up, and yeah, they're comic book writers, of course. But here are the two cliches that I saw. The same one repeated that irritated the hell out of me. The first one happens in Dr. Octavius's lab with him. And I don't exactly remember the context, but it doesn't matter. I remember the cliche. and what basically led up to it. And that is Dr. Octavius. I think either his experiments on the suit failed, or he's upset about his body degenerating, because in this story he has serious health issues. But anyways, he's looking either at the failed suit results or his health results on a computer monitor. And he's alone. Peter Parker just left, and he's staring at the screen, and it kind of zooms in on the screen a little, I think. And then what do you think happens? Can you guess? He breaks the monitor. He smashes it. Okay, so that's the first one. The second one happens later on in the game, towards the end, and it's with Mr. Osborn, Norman Osborn, I think his name is. Yeah, I think it is. But anyways, he's standing in his office. He's just gotten bad news as well. I don't remember exactly what it was, but he's up in his office looking out on these huge like floor to ceiling windows that he has up in his penthouse or whatever. He's looking out at the city. And then the camera zooms in on his hand as he's looking out. And in his hand, he's holding a glass of whiskey, like a tumbler. And it zooms in closer and closer to that glass, and you can see the city out there. Can you guess what happens? Yes, he squeezes so hard that he crushes the glass of whiskey. It cracks. Okay. How many times have you seen that kind of thing where somebody punches a monitor or they break a mirror? You know, like Frankenstein doesn't look like how he looks. He's like, and he smashes the mirror, or they break the glass and stuff like that. You've seen this over and over and over and over so many times that even before it happened, I knew they were going to break those things. I was like, they're going to break this, aren't they? And then it happened, and I was kind of like rolling my eyes inside because I hated it. It was stupid. And it's stupid for two reasons. One, because it's done so often that it becomes like a joke almost. It's like cheesy. And you're like, okay, these writers were so bad and so fucking lazy that they had to use something I've seen a million times. They couldn't come up with their own way of showing that they're upset or frustrated or whatever. They had to steal from other people. And it's not even a good theft. It's like generic garbage, right? It's not like a one of a kind gem. It's like a trillion times. It's happened a trillion times and they still stole it. It's garbage. The second reason it's bad is that even before the doctor smashed the monitor, or Norman broke that glass, like shattered it because he was so tense, supposedly. Even before that happened, I knew exactly how they felt. Like once they broke the thing, I wasn't like, oh, okay, I guess I was wrong. They actually feel angry and frustrated. I wasn't such an idiot that I was like, oh, I guess I was wrong. I thought Dr. Octavius was happy that his body's falling apart and his experiments kept failing. But no, I was wrong. He's actually angry. So it's a good thing they showed me that with a cliche. It didn't add anything. So just by deleting it, it would have been better. And that's bad. If your story and your writing is better just by deleting something you put in, then you probably fucked up. And by the way, I'm not being hard on them for doing it because we all use cliches. I probably use them right now as I'm speaking, as I'm saying this. But the thing is, when you go back and revise a final product, like a piece of art or a game or something, you have to edit it and catch it and get rid of it. And these guys didn't catch those stuff. So they kept it in there. So those are two cliches that really, really irritated me. And by the way, I said there were two reasons that those were bad. I'm actually adding a third one that I thought of. When was the last time you were so angry that you crushed a glass in your hand and like you just like ripped up your fingers and your palm. You cut all your tendons. You're like bleeding to death and you have to go to the emergency room. And the doctor's like, "What the hell happened?" And you're like, "I was angry, so I crushed the glass." Like it doesn't happen. When was the last time you smashed your monitor? Now, yes, I know people like gamers, they get into the game and they freak out and then like they'll smash their controller, the keyboard, they'll throw their monitor out the window and stuff like that. First off, that's rare. Most people don't do that. But the people who do that have a problem, right? They have a psychological issue or they're just really, really, really immature. Either way, having your villains do stupid, childish stuff like that, like smashing a monitor, it makes them less scary. She's like, "Oh wow, this guy's actually pathetic. He has the emotional maturity of like a 12-year-old or like a 19-year-old Twitch streamer. Like that's not scary. You don't want your supervillain to be a dumbass." To wrap this section up and to connect it to what I was saying earlier about cliches, these two cliches, when you look at them closely, they're actually kind of silly, like the smashing and squishing in glass in your hand. Just at a literal level, it's silly. Like you're damaging yourself physically and financially and so on. But then they're actually meaningless too, because I already knew what these guys were feeling. We all knew it. And then they did that on top of it. So that's the problem with cliches. They're just bad at every single level. The second pair of problems that I had are actually cliches too, but I'm not going to really treat them like cliches. I'm just going to treat them as something I'm tired of seeing in stories. And so what these are is the first one is when Spider-Man is fighting a bunch of bad guys who have teamed up together. And they're just like beating the shit out of him, just beating him down. They've overcome him, overwhelmed him. I think it's 5 guys, which isn't it also what Burger Place? Or is that 2 guys? I don't remember, but it's 5 guys beating the shit out of Spider-Man. He's like unconscious or nearly so. They're ready to kill him. Do you think they killed him? This is like the first half of the game, or like even a little later. So no, of course they didn't kill him. What happens is Doctor Octopus swoops in. He climbs over the edge of the building because it's happening on a ledge or something. He comes up and he's like, "Stop! We've done enough. Let's just give him a warning to stay out of our way." Of course, and so they just leave. They let Spider-Man stay there alive. And I think like a place explodes and he flies into the water. And then the game picks up a week later. Like he's bruised and stuff, but he's kind of getting over his injuries and he gets back into the fight. That's the first one. Now, the second one is when Spider Man is fighting Dr. Octopus now. And Dr. Octopus basically kicks his ass way too easily, by the way. It was a stupid fight. But Spider Man's knocked out. And so Dr. Octopus grabs Spider-Man by the head with one of his claws and like lifts him up so he can look at him face to face. And Spider-Man's just dangling there. And Dr. Octopus wants Spider-Man dead at this point. He hates him. And then somebody else shows up on the other side of the room. So like 30 feet away. And they like call out to Dr. Octopus. There's no rush here. And Dr. Octopus isn't really in danger yet. So what does Dr. Octopus do? Does he squish Spider-Man's skull and kill him and finally end the threat to his plans? No, of course not. He drops Spider-Man and goes and chases the other guy. And the problem with these two things is pretty obvious. I'm just sick of this. Why do so many games, especially games but movies and TV shows, always have the bad guy letting the good guy get away? It's just so stupid because the bad guys always hate the good guy. They supposedly want him dead. All their thugs are on the street trying to kill, in this case, Spider-Man. And then suddenly when the bad guy is facing Spider-Man directly, they're like, "Nah, I guess not. I'm not going to kill him. I'll let my thugs do it like 30 seconds from now when he leaves this building." It's just so stupid. And I'm sure you understand, so I'm not going to press the point on that. But I will say this. They don't need to do this. Just like with all cliches, it's unnecessary and it actually hurts the work. Because they could have found other ways for Spider-Man to leave. Just take like 10 minutes to think it over. How could Spider-Man have escaped those 5 thugs beating him up without Dr. Octopus coming in and just letting him live for some reason? Well, Spider-Man could use his last bit of strength to like just web himself into the ocean, right? And they lose him. Like that's easy. Just do that. Or the place explodes right when they're about to reach him, like they're stepping closer and closer to him, coming up to finish him off, and then the place explodes and they all go flying. Like whatever, it's so easy to do. All that being said, I will play the devil's advocate here and say, which by the way is a cliche, so I shouldn't have said that. But I'll say that maybe you can make an argument that Dr. Octopus allowed Spider-Man to live because he knows he's Peter Parker. Because at the end, it's revealed he knew. And I mean, we all knew he knew because it was so obvious the way they did it. If you play the game, you'll see what I mean. It's such a, so stupid. But maybe out of sympathy, out of his old feelings, because they kind of worked together for so long and like grew up as heroes together in a way, or a hero and villain together, so that he didn't want to finish him off. And I agree, yes, that could be a good angle, but they didn't build that up back when it actually happened in the game. I didn't see that. I didn't feel that Dr. Octopus was letting him live out of love or out of hesitation, because earlier they had been doing everything they could to kill Spider-Man. And after this, they're doing everything they can to kill him or even torture him. So it just doesn't work. If you're going to do something like that where the villain feels for the hero and doesn't want to kill him, you have to bake that in and build that up really well. But I'll also say that I don't like that idea, that whole idea, the concept of the villain wanting to hear the hero to live, because that diminishes the threat of the villain. Because the good guy isn't really in that much danger because the bad guy keeps refusing to kill him. So that really hurts your story. It lessens the conflict and the tension. And I recommend not making that move. Like 95% of the time, that's probably bad. And yes, you could find ways to make it good. And that's great if you do that. But this is not that story. It just doesn't work. So remember, avoid cliches and be tall, dark, and handsome.